Hi guys, today I'm going to be discussing the Amazing Grace song by Jon Newton, and this is significant because I believe that it has a lot of spiritual connotations for African Americans that are still singing these songs, or this song, or this writing. And I'll tell you why. I think that if they knew the history of Amazing Grace and the author Jon Newton and looked at it with open eyes and an open heart, they would not sing that song. Well, so let me give you a little history on Jon Newton. Jon Newton was a author of The Amazing Grace. He was also a former slave trader. He inspired lots of today. There's a lot of musicals and stories written about him. He wrote the story, The Amazing Grace, in 1779. He was also a poet. But his main thing was that he was a shipper of slaves from Africa to America. And the estimate is that he shipped over 500,000. And that's a conservative number. During that period, the number of slaves that were, because they had other people that were shipping the slaves from Africa to America, or stealing them from Africa to America. They had other shippers, and that's just an estimate on his part. Supposedly, Jon Newton wrote Amazing Grace because he had a catharsis, an inspiration, I won't say vision, but something within him that sparked him that, hey, this is wrong. I shouldn't be shipping slaves, being a part of this. Long story short, he wrote Amazing Grace, and that's the cleaned up version. If you look at that, he shipped hundreds of thousands. He had to see a lot of murdered slaves by the people who were manning the ships. He had to see thousands and thousands of slaves that refused to go any further and jumped over. He had to see them in very demoralizing positions of being stacked on top of each other and defecating and vomiting on each other and crying and moaning in chains. Today you can't even treat animals like that. You can't. So he had to see that and been okay with it for as long as he was. But when he wrote the song, he felt so ratchet, as he says in his songs. Amazing Grace, the saved ratchet like me. Not me, but you know what I mean. If you look at the verses, he felt really that he was a very ratchet person for doing that, for seeing human lives being treated less than you treat literally a bug on the street. So that's, to me, that is his personal testimony. There's something between him and God. And even though he wrote the song, the reason why African American people should not be singing that song, it has to, in my opinion, has to spit on the face of all those ancestors or those people, because some people don't believe they're ancestors of the slaves that were taken from Africa, of all the people who were taken from Africa. It has to spit on their memory, because now you, as an African American ancestry, you are now singing a song that somebody wrote because they felt horrible of what they did to your people. Now you're going to repeat that song as if you were ratchet. You're not ratchet. And I know that people say, well, in general, we're all sinners. You are not ratchet. This man was speaking specifically of how demoralized he felt to open his eyes to see what a horrible, horrible person and a horrible, horrible mistake he had made. How he had turned himself on away from his spirituality to become a demoralized, dehumanizing person. This is not the history of black people. This is not the history of African Americans. This is not the history of Africans. There's no way that you should be singing Amazing Grace, because it is almost the opposite of why you should be singing that song. Again, you didn't do these things to those people. This was a personal thing between him and God. How it got into song version for the populace, he wrote it for himself. He didn't write it for all of you to pass it out at churches to sing. It's a testimony of a horrid soul who, for all intents and purposes, from his report, he changed and saw the light. You, as an African American, should never, ever place yourself in the same place as a man who took people from another land and saw them murdered, slaughtered, had to commit suicide just to get away from such a horrible life. And you sing the same song that this man, you don't feel the same way. It comes from a place that African Americans could never come from. African Americans never took anybody from anybody's land. Africans never, well, I know some sold Africans to America, but